Scary numbers, dark times, but there might be light on the horizon of a new day. On today's Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. So do you guys think I need some new bumper music? I mean, I really like that song, and it's Care of the Dawn. It's great for motivation halfway through the week and everything like that, but I'm starting to wonder if that sudden, chord coming in right from the beginning with the trumpets is, jars a lot of people to turn the sound down. Then you're not hearing me right now when I talk. Because I am Charles Ray Dawson, a sales manager and associate broker here at ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, and this is episode 91. And anyways, I've just given a thought to that. So comment below. Send me a text if you have my number. No, I'm not giving out my number to strangers on the internet, but some of you are not strangers. You're just strange. So, yeah, it's a really, it's a real estate week. What can I say? I just went through one of the most strenuous closings of my life. We finally got that sucker done on Tuesday, and wound up pretty much yelling and swearing at everybody in the transaction except for the agent on the other side, and I just used bad words around him. But we got the deal done, and a good friend of mine has gotten his house after having sold one of his houses many years ago, and then helping his mom buy a house. And yeah, so one of those like lifetime clients, and we finally got that thing done. So really happy about that. So besides the Ray news and everything like that in the real estate world this week, well, numbers are still being the numbers. Interest rates are still fluctuating around, although I did hear some really cool rumors. So what I want to do is let's get those numbers out of the way, because I know you guys love them and I love doing them for you, but we got other things to talk about. So here are the numbers for October 26, 2022. Actives this week are 20,632, up 53 from the week before. New listings were 1,829, which is down 170 from the previous week. Pendings this week are 1,085, down 52. Under contracts looking for backups is 598, down 7. And contracts with buyer contingency are at 75, down 17. So as we can see across the board, even though we have new listings going down, all right, they're still coming on at a rate that is exceeding the ones that are currently going under contract. So closings this week were 1,262, which is relatively low, not enough to keep a lot of escrow companies happy, and agents too. But coming soon to an MLS near you is 567, also a low number. And continuing on with the low numbers that we have right now, buyers out there at 78.6 Cromford report, and the demand or supply is at 81.5. So 2 weeks ago, we tracked over on that, and we are continuing to move on. I wanted to point something out to you guys along these lines is pulled a chart off the Cromford report. Apparently today is Tina's birthday. Happy birthday, Tina, even though I know you don't watch my show. Otherwise, you'd be calling me up saying, why am I using your documents? Because they are so good and easy to use, and you're so knowledgeable. Don't sue me. Anyways, pay no attention to the copyright down at the bottom on this, but just to break it down, the Cromford report numbers by city, as you can see, the market index for places like Fountain Hills, Paradise Valley, Scottsdale, and Cave Creek are still, above 100. Meaning that Cave Creek is near balance, but is pretty much slightly still in the seller's market. Fountain Hills is definitely still in the seller's market, 152. Remember when the whole valley used to be 152? Paradise Valley is at 144. Scottsdale is at 128. So Scottsdale and Fountain Hills and Paradise Valley are still in your seller's market. And then from down there, we go into what we call the balanced market. All right, Cave Creek can be arguably a balanced market. Chandler, Phoenix, all right, Glendale, just holding on at the bottom, still considered a balanced market. And then we start moving into, the buyer's markets, right? Starting off with Tempe at 87.6. Buyers have a little bit of the upper hand there. That's just enough to call it a true buyer's market, and it starts going down from there. All the way down to Buckeye, 51.3. That is pretty much, we used to have that joke a couple of years ago where you'd write the offer going, $5 million, plus my firstborn child. In Buckeye, they're writing the offers, and you throw in your firstborn child, and maybe we'll buy the house if we like the appraisal and the inspection. So And that's really where the market is. If you are a first-time home buyer or getting out there, and you're somebody who is looking for a deal, Maricopa, Queen Creek, and Buckeye are definitely your 3 houses you want to look at. Next tranche goes up from there. Surprise, Avondale, Gilbert, moving into Peoria area. These are also your areas that can be considered into a, maybe a first-time home buyer area. And something else we want to discuss there is we are going to be holding a buyer symposium here at ProStar. We're going to be probably having it offsite at one of the local escrow companies, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be inviting people to come out on a Saturday, spend an hour with us, eat some chips, and dip in that kind of stuff. Drinks will be provided, and we're there to inform you, the buyers, about what is going on in the market and how to buy a house, especially in this kind of crazy market. We are looking into having a couple lenders on board on that. They will discuss you what, qualifications, how do you get qualified, how little things on your credit can be repaired and get you in a better place. We'll definitely be talking about 2-1 buy downs and all those other things that I've been discussing, and how a buyer can help overcome these current interest rate obstacles and get into the house that you're looking for. So stay tuned for the date. We haven't locked the date in yet because we haven't locked the site in yet. But once we do, follow this space because we're going to be doing that. And you get to see me in person. Of course, I'll just be sitting in the background not doing any talking because I'm sure Steve and the lenders will be doing all the talking. But I'll be making funny faces through the entire thing. So watch this space for more information on that. So that it covers up the numbers. Now let's go into the rumor mill. All right, so last Friday, this is real estate rumor. This is really weird. When you follow the various news sources, you will get various things start popping up through different channels, right? One person out there saying the sky is falling. Oh, by the way, here's my advertisement for selling gold. You guys know what I think about those sites and those people. But when you start getting the same story from multiple different channels, it's definitely time to actually start doing a deep dive on that and going, okay, where is this information coming from? And the rumor that I heard floating around first came across on some email going, can rates be dropping down into the 5s again by the end of the year? And my first thought in that, that's clickbait. All right, that's, woulda, shoulda, coulda. A lot of things can happen right now. And so that's, you sort of dismiss that kind of stuff. And then I got it from another site. It came across as an email to me, from a more trusted source. Like, wow, that's really fascinating. I followed up on the email, and there was a little video here. And the video was this hour-long podcast. I will find it and link it in the show notes below so you can see what the professionals sound like when they talk real estate. And this guy basically breaks it down because of the way way the interest rates are created and the way inflation rates are calculated because of they calculate inflation over the course of a year. Coming into the next couple months, you're going to see those previous months from 1 year back drop off, and you're going to see the inflation rate suddenly change. Now, there's also 2 things going on with this. The bankers are starting to, or the Fed and the big government banks are starting to realize that they're screwing this thing up. They've applied, they've gone down the checklist of things to do. They're okay in case of inflation, break the economy, and so they smash that, and they're working through it. But there's a really good argument that because of these changes in the way inflation is going to be, it's not that inflation is going to go away. It's just going to be reported differently. And we'll be looking at the month-over-month increase. And with that month-over-month, with those previous months dropping off, well, guess what? If you had that big spike in inflation back real soon after that last COVID check went out, that blew everything up, those months are going to start dropping off. So now you're going to say, hey, we don't have any bad inflation anymore. So unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at this, we're not going to get these numbers until after everybody votes in 2 weeks. All right, so it shouldn't have an effect on the on the election or anything like that, but do definitely expect to see a lot of people suddenly talking about inflation got whipped, inflation's taken care of, you know. And once you hear those stories out, now you're going to start seeing interest rates go down. Now, this isn't really going to help anybody who's trying to buy or sell right now, you know, here at the end of October, maybe even through November, right? But we can start seeing that turn around, all right? Remember, going back here to our demand side on our Cromford numbers, right? Our demand right now is at 78.6, right? 100 is considered normal, where we should have 100, you know, buyers out there. We only have 78, and where we should have 100 houses for sale, we only have 81. So what happens to people? What do people do when they suddenly, when that pressure comes off? All this, I mean, we saw this earlier in the spring. Fives scared people. All right. People quit looking at 5. All right. What happens after the rest of this? And all of a sudden 5 starts looking like a good deal. 5.5 starts looking like a great deal. A 5 with a 2-1 buy down, or maybe a couple points, you know, to keep it down permanently, can easily get you back in the 4s. Right? Anybody out there who does not want to buy a house today at 4%, raise your hands. I thought so. All right. So this is what this storyline is coming at. And I got that from, you know, so I hear that, and then I get it from a third person. Okay. So now we have 3 different sources, and I find out they're all looking at the same numbers. All the economists are looking at the same thing and saying, hey guys, this could really be a thing. Now, I've talked to you guys a lot about how real estate news happens, right? And by the time you're hearing about MSNBC, CBS, Fox News, Lord help me, PBS, and NPR, all right, the professionals have already known about it for the last month, all right? So I heard about this last week. I'm telling you too, this week, all right, we might see this start coming up in the next 2 weeks or so. Hey, guess what? That's going to be exactly the same time those inflation numbers come out. And when those inflation numbers come out, then you might start seeing those little news articles in Arizona Republic and stuff about, is the boom about to happen again? We'll see. All right. We got a lot more inventory than we had before. All right. That's good. You know, 5,000 houses for sale is really, really bad if you're trying to buy. 20,000 is really good. And now you can have somebody sitting out there going at the interest rates they could have bought earlier this year, and now they have 3 or 4 more houses to look for than what they used to have before. So we're getting a little optimistic over here. Not crazy optimistic. Crazy optimistic is bad, all right? But, you know, there's some light at the end of this deep, dark tunnel, all right? We might be pulling through. Watch the space for it more. And in other news, just to wrap up, the rest of my week and the rest, what I think is a really important story. And so I want to share this with you. I'm going to drop names out, all right? But I had a closing. I had a rough closing. All right. I mean, this thing was supposed to close on Friday. We wound up closing on Tuesday. And it's way out in East Mesa. And so it's like 25-mile drive for me from the office out to the house and back kind of routines. But while I'm out, there was another gentleman out there that had a house that I sold him a couple of years ago. And now it looks like he might want to sell it, might need to sell it. And he wanted to talk to me about it. And I talked to him and said, hey, I got a closing going on out there, really soon. How about if I come out to you the day of my closing when I hand the keys off to the new buyer, and I'll come over and talk to you? Sounds like a pretty good plan. So that was supposed to happen Friday night. Friday didn't happen. It was then supposed to happen Monday. And Monday didn't happen. For pretty much the same reason it didn't happen on Friday, but we just had to roll it over. Yeah, it's like literally we were at the same place Tuesday morning as we were Friday morning. All right, and it all boiled down to one really weird thing. Okay, here's a little note. Yes, I'm babbling. When you get a loan, all right, and when you buy a house, all right, and you sign all the documents and all the paperwork and everything like that, and escrow has it, and they have your cashier's check or your wired funds in, all right, they're going to send those documents back to the lender. The lender is going to confirm that they have all the documents in place that they need. And then with all the documents they have in place and they need, they're going to do one last thing before they hit that button sending escrow the money. And they're going to call your boss and go, hey, is Joey still working there? That's all they have to say. Is Joey still working there? Right. There is a couple rules to that question, though. They have to call a listed number that's officially that company's number. They can't call your boss direct on his cell phone that you gave them. All right. They can be transferred to a cell phone from the receptionist. All right. But they have to make this final verification. All right. And this is to make sure that literally you did not sign the documents, drive into the office, and tell your boss to kiss off, you're leaving. And for those of you guys who think, well, that would never happen. No, it literally happens a lot. All right. I've seen it happen just in this office at least twice. All right. Person signs the documents. They had the job, qualified for the loan. Life is good. But they hate that job, and they're just staying in that job long enough to get their new house bought. And then they were going to quit their job, and they signed the piece of paper, and then they quit their job. Don't do that, people, because that's what that phone call is for. So the reason why we didn't close on Friday is because when they made that phone call to that company, nobody answered. As one of the problems with small mom and pop shops is sometimes the receptionist might be filling other roles. And at that particular moment, she was back in accounting, straightening out a problem with a little sign and a bell. Right? And if that phone rings through and goes to like a voice box or something like that, or worse, goes to a phone tree, press 1 for accounting, press 2 for... There is no press 2 to verify that our employees are employed. Right? You might not have that option. In this particular case, the third party that was making those phone calls wasn't taking the extra steps. Right? So Friday, could not get a hold of them. All right? Monday, they call and try to get a hold of him, but the guy that they need to talk to is in a meeting all morning, production meeting, and the people who are making these phone calls are back on the East Coast. All right? And so they go home at 5:30. All right, and you can work out the time. I think we're still on Pacific time right now for the rest of the world. So if it's 5:30 over there, 4, 3, 2, it's like 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock here. Our guys are just getting back from lunch, and they're already taking off for the rest of the day. All right, that's why we didn't close on Monday. Okay, eventually, Tuesday, with that entire freaking company knows if somebody calls and you're talking to somebody on the phone and they want to know about employment verification, send them directly to this person over there. We finally got that call made. So, and then we closed. And the buyer got his keys. He was very happy. All right. Then I went over to this other guy's place. Remember the guy I was telling you about 5 minutes ago that I was going to visit afterwards? All right, this is where the story starts. That was all preamble. So here comes the story. And this is the lesson you guys need to learn. I tell you guys a lot. Look out for, keep an eye on your elderly parents, your elderly family members, maybe Joey over there who's none too bright. I mean, yeah, he's 35 years old, but he's still not too bright. We need to keep an eye on him too, because this is the scenarios what happened. I go out there and I talk to this client of mine. And in the course of that conversation, all right, of, hey, this is a condition of the house. I like the condition of the house. Sales price, this and that and the other thing. Let's start talking about your payoffs. And he suddenly he mentioned that he had just signed Monday, the day before, some documents that this lender had shown up with. All right, that he was going to get a second mortgage on his current house. So he'd have some money. All right. I went, oh, well, why did you do, I went, okay. And it's like, you do you. All right. Adults get to spend money. But then he mentioned, and so now my mortgage is $800 more a month than it was before. And I was like, wow, that's quite a jump. I knew what his payment was, and it was a lot less than that. And I was like, that's quite a bit. How much did you take out? And he said, $35,000. All right. Anybody who can do math in their head, all right, I just heard your ears pop because you just did the same thing that I did at that moment. I looked at him, and in my brain, I'm going, $35,000 on a 30-year fixed second mortgage should not be $800 a freaking month, even at today's interest rates. All right. I mean, back of the math calculation, if there was a 10% interest rate, 10% interest rate, that means that the interest rate on the interest on the first month of that loan, all right, would be $3,500 divided by 12. Let's go to the calculator. 3,500 divided by 12 is $300, $291 to be exact, all right? But a 30-year loan, okay, 30 years is also called a 360-month loan. If you're paying off, all right, if you're paying off a loan amortized out on this, and if I'm screwing this math up for all you math people out there, I am so sorry, all right? But 35,000 divided by 360, that's $97. All right, so we're looking at best all right, and because of amortization and that the principal is constantly down, at the absolute worst, that should be $400. Absolute worst, but even then, you're not going to be $400 because remember, as you pay that principal down, right, the interest on the money that you still owe is slightly smaller consistently. That's why I keep telling people, look at your amortization tables and make sure that you round your payments up because it screws the bank over. Well, somebody's getting screwed in this story, and it definitely is in the bank. So I was like, that can't be right. Do you got your loan document? You got your paperwork? He goes, yeah. And he hands me over a piece of paperwork, all right, that's called a CD. That's your disclosure statement, tells you where all right, and I realized that, you know, this nice gentleman who thought he was getting a second mortgage on his house actually got his house refinanced. All right, the loan officer wrote up the docs and wrote up the loan as a complete refinance of his loan. So what did they do? They paid they were planning on paying his original loan off, right, that he had at 3.5% interest. Pay that bulk off. Have him borrow $35,000 more, all right, on top of that original loan. Do this entire thing at a grand interest rate of 6 1/8. That is 6.125 for you people in the audience. All right, so we will go from 3.5 to 6.125 in an interest rate, and wrap that whole thing up and charge them $20,000 closing costs on that thing. All right. That little noise that just happened to you guys' brain, it happened to mine too once I figured this whole thing out, and I went ballistic. All right. So, first thing I did is I called his brother, who's sort of in a caretaker position and is helping out and stuff like that. And I said, hey, did you know about this loan? Yeah, he said something about that. Well, he signed the paperwork and it's bad. All right. And then I called a couple lenders, people that you've heard about on this thing. And after sitting down and explaining it to him that you thought you were getting a second mortgage, but instead you were getting you got a refinance. And I asked him, like, you think you're getting a second mortgage? You wanted $35,000 out in pocket. Well, you didn't get $35,000 out in pocket. All right. Explain this whole thing out, and he's like, well, how do I stop this? And I said, well, we're going to activate the right of rescission on this, and we can back it out. Now, you don't have a lot of lemon laws in real estate, but one of the ones that you do have is you have a 72-hour period after the time period you do a second mortgage to go, nah, dog, I don't want that. All right. We did have that document sitting there. Okay, he can still back this out. The big part of the issue is that we needed to make sure we can go in there and get this thing turned off, all right, before the loan funded, because escrow out there is going to pay off that loan. All right, and when escrow pays off that loan disappears. He'll never be able to get that interest rate back. But what I did is I had his brother and him contact escrow saying, hey, there was a problem here. This is not the loan that he thought he was getting. Do not fund. Back this whole thing out. Do not make payoffs. All right. It said right there on the CD that the loan was not going to be funded until the 28th, which is tomorrow, Friday. All right. So we had enough time to do this. Eventually got the proper form to him. He signed it, faxed it over to the place in Illinois, all right, where the loan processing center is on this, saying, I don't want this loan anymore. Stop. All right. Then I ran out there this morning, got a copy of it from him, and then took it to the bank and then did certified mail to the exact same place. I guess you trust fax machines anymore. Oh, yeah, the fax came in, but we didn't have any paper in, so it's not our fault. You got your loan anyways. Send that out because we had until midnight tonight to say, no, we don't want this. And then we send the entire package over to both the loan officer and the escrow company to stop this entire thing. So that was today's drama. Yesterday and today's drama. You know, wait, today's Thursday, isn't it? Yeah, I'm recording. It's Thursday. So that was Tuesday night. Coming home at 8:30 on this thing, all fired up, all day yesterday, Wednesday, and now we got that resolved this morning. So we're pretty good to go. Now, that being said, what does this mean to you, the consumer? All right. There was a really good chance that there was a miscommunication between the borrower and the lender in this one. All right, that she used terms that he didn't understand, or he used terms that she didn't understand. Whatever it is, communication got crossways. Right? What he thought was going to be a second mortgage, meaning the first mortgage stayed in place, turned into a refinance, all right, that would cost him $20,000 to borrow $35,000 of his own money out of his house. Of course, this whole thing, of all the numbers I've thrown at you, just remember this. If you were ever paying $20,000 for $35,000 of your own money out of your house back, you stop what you're doing and you call me right now. All right? My number's below. All right? Just don't do that. That's an all-stop kind of thing. All right. And if you ever hear any of your family members, right, and this is what I really want to get out to you guys on this, right? When you are talking to a family member of any family member and they start talking about pulling equity out of their house for whatever reason, all right, just subtly, gently query them. Oh, you remodeling? You're doing this? What kind of interest rate are you going to be getting on this? If they don't know their interest rate, that you definitely throw in because a lot of people, don't know all of the different mechanisms out there in the loan industry. And if they go to a vendor of loans and say, I want X, a good lender is going to go, that's great, I can help you with that. What do you need X for? Right. This particular case, if you want $35,000 just to have on hand or just to whatever reason, and you know you have more than that in equity in your house, well, then you use a product called a loan or a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. Right? It's like a credit card. In fact, when we took one out on our house many years ago, it literally was a credit card. You could call it a debit card, but there wasn't money there in that account. It was credit. And we could buy up to, I think it was like $20,000 or something like that with this card. And think of it as a credit card with an open balance of $20,000 that you can spend with. And what you can do is you can use it, swipe it, just like a credit card, just like an ATM. And instead of it going on your credit card account, it goes on that HELOC account, and that's what you start getting charged interest on. Only the amount that you use, because you're only borrowing it when you use it, as opposed to taking $35,000 and sticking it in the bank and just watching it as it costs you money. Remember, we're at 6% right now. Right? That's a 0.5% a month. Right, that you're going to be making payments on that amount, and it's just there to be there, right? So that's the mechanism for that. And if he really does, and he's sitting down with his brother and a couple other people, and just like, hey, what were you planning on doing with that money? Because you didn't really say you had a reason for it. You just wanted it. And the other question is, would he have even considered that unless this person called him up out of the blue? Hey, how'd you like some money? All right. So I don't want to speculate too much on this for, well, one, liability reasons, because you can't just speculate about somebody else's, their motives. All right. Like I said, I'm thinking probably just a miscommunication or something like that. Who knows? And that's all I'm going to say about that. Watch your folks around money, and children and pets around water. Right? Don't drive into anything flooded. Work your circles and have a great weekend. And it's been 30 minutes here, whatever, and I am out. You know, I totally forgot to mention the reason why I call this episode Send the Missionaries. So, just an aside, last night when we were trying to figure out how we were going to get that document signed by the gentleman who had, in the loan, and then we needed to get it faxed out that night. Since he's elderly and has a hard time getting around, sitting there trying to think about what resources do we have, all right? And I had remembered that when I'd been there the night before, that he had the typical paraphernalia around a house of somebody who's a member of the LDS church, right? And there was a Book of Mormon on the coffee table next to me. So I asked his brother, like, straight up, "Is like, hey, he's Mormon, right?" It's like, "Yeah, he's we're both." And I said, "Okay, no problem. Call the missionaries. Send the missionaries." All right. You got the number, give him a call, say, "Hey, send the duty driver over, or get onto that LDS phone tree network, see if somebody can come pick him up, drive him over to Office Max and back," right? And I swear to God, all right, if I gave the warning order out to your average stake or ward house, all right, or the 82nd Airborne saying mobilize, get ready to deploy, the steakhouse or ward house is going to beat them hands down. Right? Just a little side story I wanted to get across.